Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson. Welcome to tonight's weather chat with Timmy. It'll kind of be somewhat of a quick one, and we're mainly just going to be talking about Hurricane Lee here. The latest advisory from Hurricane Lee came out about an hour or so ago, and it does have the winds at about 85 miles an hour. So again, that's still making that to be a Category 1 hurricane. But if you look below on the satellite imagery, well, it looks like it's a little bit of a mess here, as a matter of fact. Some drier air and some wind shear has gotten involved yet again, and that has really kind of limited the convection that we see around the center of Lee. Nonetheless, it's still making its way up towards the north. It's going to kind of pick up a little bit more speed here as we go through the overnight, but it's also going to be weakening as it does so. The wind field is also really expanded too here, even more than it did since last night. So with that in mind, you can see tropical storm force winds already over Bermuda. The hurricane force winds are also kind of expanded outwards from the center. A lot of times when we see these larger hurricanes weakening, their wind fields do actually expand a little bit, albeit the winds are also decreasing. Kind of interesting when you think about it. All right, with that in mind, we did get a pass by from a buoy nearby there. So let's go ahead and we'll take kind of a quick look here at that buoy. I will go ahead and put up the screen here for you guys. Now, on a side note, this buoy has not actually reported anything in about 2 hours. And when it did, earlier on, this is what it looked like out there. Now, of course, it is obviously nighttime there, so we don't have any current pictures, but the pictures that we did have during the day were pretty impressive. Wind gusts over 80 miles an hour. As a matter of fact, it did actually have one wind gust speed here, which I forgot to write down, so I got to do the quick calculation here on my phone, but it was a wind gust here of about 80 knots, which would put that at about 92 miles an hour. That's pretty impressive for that buoy. Out there. And again, that's probably part of the reason why, well, of course, that was actually about 4 o'clock Eastern time, so about 3 o'clock Central time. This is the current conditions there. Again, you can see the pressure drop with that buoy. You can see how that green line there, that pressure really just tanked. Those winds have gone up. And again, if we take a look here at the latest position here, we can see that it is just right at the fringe there of the hurricane force winds. Now, again, the hurricane force winds do extend pretty far out from the center, about 100 miles actually out from the center. But again, the maximum winds at this point are about 85 miles an hour, not like the 105 we were seeing last night. So wind field kind of continues to expand a little bit. Let's take a look at how far out the tropical storm force winds extend. And now again, this yellow color that you see here, those are the high-end tropical storm force winds of about 57 to 73 miles an hour. So we see that even that extends, at least on the eastern edge. Oh, we'll go ahead and exit that out so we can go ahead and get that measurement there. Extends about, whoops, just lost it. Sorry about that. Have shaky fingers. About 200 miles out from the center on the eastern part. Now, again, remember, folks, when it comes to hurricanes, the eastern part tends to be where the higher winds are, and part of that has to do with the forward motion of the hurricane there. So you can see those strong tropical storm force winds do not extend as far out on the western side. But let's go ahead and we'll measure out to the overall tropical storm force winds, the maximum radius on the eastern side. 300 and about 350 miles. So pretty cool nonetheless. Now, mind you, folks, this particular wind stretch is only about 39 to 56 miles an hour, and there is Bermuda right there. You can see kind of in the middle, right at the edge there. Let's see what that particular buoy had there. Unfortunately, it doesn't give wind speeds there, but does show kind of a low pressure. Well, obviously, there's a low pressure, or lower pressure is hurricanes are pretty big areas of low pressure. So again, right now, looks like the closest pass by we've had was this buoy 41048. And again, right now it's still, well, at least the last observation, which is about 2 hours ago, had winds gusting to about 81 miles an hour, sustained winds at about 60 miles an hour. So easily within the tropical storm force wind sustained, with gusts up to, Category 1 hurricane status. So what is Lee going to be doing here as we go through the rest of the night? It's going to be tracking its way up towards the north. As mentioned, it is going to be picking up speed. We're then going to be seeing it making its way towards the Canadian Maritimes and parts of eastern Maine. And we do actually have hurricane warnings, I do believe, that are in effect. Let's go ahead and pull back up the graphic really quickly, or there might still be watches. There's so many watches to keep an eye on right now. Let's go ahead here and take a look. Yeah, so hurricane watches are in effect for the southern coast of Nova Scotia, as well as the southern coast of New Brunswick, Ontario. So again, both of those are being handled by Environment Canada. And then we have tropical storm warnings up the entire Maine coast back down towards Boston. So what is Lee going to be doing here as it makes its way towards land? Well, it's going to be continuing to weaken, but it might still have winds of around 75 to 80 miles an hour as it does make its final approach tomorrow night. It'll probably be making a landfall sometime Saturday afternoon. Right now, the National Hurricane Center has it right here at the tip of Nova Scotia. And this is going to be, like I said, Saturday afternoon with winds of about 70 miles an hour. However, by that point, it's likely going to be transitioning from a tropical system to a non-tropical system, or post-tropical or extratropical are the terms you hear thrown out in meteorology. Again, I don't know why they use those terms. My personal opinion, non-tropical, but no one asked me. So we're not expecting this to be a big hurricane when it does make landfall. As a matter of fact, this area it routinely gets hit pretty good with weakening hurricanes, and also in the wintertime with nor'easters. So some of the wind speeds that this area might be seeing here are not going to be that unusual for a strong storm that they sometimes see anyway. So this area very well built to handle that, just because they get hit pretty good, especially in the wintertime, the fall and the wintertime, with again some hurricanes and also some non-hurricane low pressures that sometimes make their way through. With that in mind here, there's a lot of stuff to go over with some of these tropical storm warnings. Kind of the main thing is going to be, especially mainly up along the coastline, is where those winds are going to be gustiest. Yeah, that's the word, gustiest. Windiest. I guess we'll just say windiest. Again, if we kind of take a look here at the wind field, more or less, you can see that it does expand pretty far out, albeit, again, those winds are going to be decreasing as it does work its way inland. So we will be seeing some high waves in parts of that area. But overall, you get the idea. So you probably have been wondering, what else could Lee be bringing? Well, interestingly, sometimes a lot of times when we see these tropical systems make landfall, sometimes they can bring a little bit in the way of additional severe weather in the form of thunderstorms. So there is going to be a little bit of an enhanced severe weather, or at least a somewhat slightly elevated severe weather risk going into the weekend across parts of Maine. So that'll be pretty interesting to see, as well as parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. So that's kind of a quick little update here on what Lee is going to be doing. So for those of you who might have interests over in New England or the Canadian Maritimes, yes, it's going to be windy, yes, it's going to be rainy, and yes, there will be some waves. But keep in mind, folks, that as I mentioned earlier, this is an area that is somewhat prone to this type of situation, and oftentimes does see some pretty strong winds just in general, with non-tropical systems too. So especially when they make their way over to, Nova Scotia and parts of New Brunswick and Maine. So there's a lot of detail to go into about here with Lee, but unfortunately due to time, we can't necessarily go in too much here. But some of the forecasts that we kind of been seeing being put out from, the Hurricane Center and everything else here does actually kind of indicate that there are, it's going to be a bit windy there. Let's see here, right on parts near Bristol, Maine here, winds could gust as high as about 55 miles an hour as we go into the day on Saturday. Let's take a look here and see what some of the ocean, or at least some of the coastal part of the forecast here will be indicating. And basically, we're going to be seeing waves, again, near Wiscasset, Maine, about 14 miles off there. So around that area, going to be seeing some decent waves, about 15 feet overall. But then, of course, we'll be seeing those decreasing. Whoops, just realized you had the wrong graphic up there. This is the one that you want. There's Lee. Sorry, that was Margot, and that's actually an old graphic there. We're not going to talk about Margot tonight, but we will talk about Margot tomorrow morning, or tomorrow evening. Wow. And then because we got ourselves a hurricane, or at least by that point, a post-tropical storm that will be making landfall. We will be covering it as we go into this weekend. We'll have some buoys out there. We'll maybe see here some of the fellow AWSC meteorologists can join us in with some of their input. So it'll certainly be a pretty interesting weekend going forward here. So again, Lee is going to continue to track its way towards the north. We're expecting it to make its, the impacts of Lee are going to start to be felt as we go into tomorrow night. Looks like for at least the Maine coastline and Nova Scotia and parts of New Brunswick, the peak activity is going to be as we go into Saturday afternoon and into early Saturday evening. It'll then track its way over to Newfoundland and then exit back out into the open waters where it will likely continue to weaken as we go into Monday morning. So this is not going to be a long-term type of setup here. Again, Lee's going to be moving pretty quickly. So really it's going to be Friday night through probably early Saturday night that we're going to be seeing, probably the height of the activity across Maine and parts of Nova Scotia. So pretty cool, huh? I think it is. All right. Like I said, we'll go into more detail about this tomorrow night. I'm sorry, I wanted to wait for the intermediate update to come out here and had to go through some data a little bit. And so it'll be pretty interesting. And like I said, we'll take more of an in-depth look at this going into tomorrow evening as it nears land. We'll take a look at some more forecasts and we'll take a look at some more buoys. And of course, it'll be it'll be a fun time. All right, with that in mind, everyone, I thank you all very much for taking the time to join me here on this quick tropical update. Hope you all learned something. Hope you all find it just as amusing as I do. Like I said, this will certainly be an interesting one to watch. Unfortunately, Lee is looking pretty ragged there on the satellite imagery, but it's still packing a little bit of a punch there. Looks can be deceiving sometimes. That's why it's always important to look more into the system with the data that comes out from reconnaissance and other things. So with that in mind, hope you all have a good rest of your evening. See you back here tomorrow evening. And also as we go forward through the weekend. And hey, maybe we'll be seeing some interesting stuff. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone. Take care.